In January of 2022, I was driving myself to work. It was my first day back after taking a year away from teaching after giving birth to my third child. I was pondering as I travelled. I dropped my little one at family daycare and the car was silent. My brain loud. I was excited. I had missed the classroom, my students, my colleagues, the buzz of the schoolyard and the unknown of what each day would bring. I realised in my time away I'd missed a big part of me. Now, don't get me wrong, being a mother is the greatest gift life has ever bestowed upon me. My children are my greatest joy and are my purpose in life. They are my reason for being and my everything. But I learned in my time away, in order to be a good mother, I have to acknowledge the human being I was before them and the one I will continue to be. A person with a commitment to do good things with my time whilst I'm alive and keep the good things that I did going strong long after I'm gone. I got to school that morning and I headed for the gym, where everybody congregated for the first day back. As the day got underway, I sat for a moment and I looked around the room. New faces, familiar faces, some with new hairstyles, some with a summer glow from days spent on the beach with family. They looked refreshed, invigorated, excited, about to embark on the longest term of the year. I smiled. I knew in about 5 to 6 weeks' time we'd all be sat round looking a lot more tired and dishevelled as we met our halfway mark for term 1. It was that day I decided to write a letter for teachers, a letter that would take me 8 months to write, a letter that I'm going to share with you today. Why, might you ask? To send a message that will hopefully stay with you forever. Here is the letter that I wrote. Dear teachers, I write, or in this instance talk, to you today as a fellow colleague of a global profession. This letter comes from my heart to yours, and with your help aims to reach far and wide, transcending the limitations of distance, language, and culture. My message has a purpose, a motivation. Its impetus is to drive you to discover, learn, and reflect upon, you. This letter, this message promises stories of my own ponderings, my adventures, my journey to teaching, and my travel thus far, filled with moments of embarrassment, confessions of antics, but most importantly, the special moments of my teaching life that has kept my sparkle burning bright today. But enough about me for a moment, back to you. I write to you today to ask you a very important question. It's short, it isn't at all sophisticated, but like an onion, it's multi-layered, complex, and the deeper you go, it has the ability to make you cry when you get to the answer. So, I implore you to pause, stop, and just reflect on these 3 words I'm asking. Who are you? It may sound like a glib utterance that would ordinarily function as a request for information, which most would respond with a name and profession. In fact, I've been asked this question countless times. You know it. You've been asked it too. We've all been to a professional development seminar or gathered with new staff on our first day in a new job and asked to form a social circle in the middle of the room, or on a larger scale huddled in teams of 12 around multiple round tables in a conference centre. The painted visual would be similar, or like worldwide, it would be a similar scene worldwide anyways. We sit on fold-out chairs that we will all be kindly asked to stack at the end, clutching our throats, scalding cup of tea or instant coffee we've just made for ourselves at the refreshment table. We nervously rustle our pre-packaged biscuits into our bags as we hunt around for our favourite pen, probably hiding in one of our many zip pockets, all with the aim to look prepared and avoid idle chit-chat with others that we don't know. It's important for us to look ready. It's important for us to take notes and make obligatory doodles. Too nervous to break the ice with anyone unknown at this point in the day, I've been known to meerkat pose at large conferences in the hope that I can find someone I know to join forces with, so I just don't have to do it alone. These events are so much easier if you know someone. So we find our spot, we get seated, settle down, test the temperature of the room, and add or remove clothing items to get acclimatised, especially if it's one of those 8-hour endeavours and we're in it for the long haul. And we wait. Some of us furiously punch out a response message on our phones in the aim to get up to date with the 10 friends we were meant to get back to a few days ago. Others will be scrolling Facebook or Instagram. Some daring enough to maybe take a cheeky selfie until our presenter finds a gap in the circular fence of teachers and wrestles their way to the void in the centre. Or, for those at the conference centre, hikes up the 3-tiered staircase onto the stage. Looking slightly bewildered, they break the silence. They break the ice with a little throat-clearing cough. They gain everyone's attention, though in COVID times I don't think people are doing that so much. They start with an exchange of pleasantries, a solid good morning, welcome, followed by a thank you for coming and a thank you to the event organiser and everyone who's responsible for the day's itinerary. Then they briefly get to themselves, telling us a little about what they do and why they're there. They give us a brief running order for the day, and then when all the housekeeping has been taken care of, they turn their attention to us. We all know it's coming. The dreaded getting to know you exercise, or who are you starter activity. They usher us to offer up a little bit of information about us, which of course you can't avoid or skip because you're taking part whether you like it or not. A quick series of quick fire questions that wraps you up in about 20 to 30 seconds. More often not with starting with our names, the school we've come from, the years of service, of teaching that we've done, and then for an extra sprinkle of added spice, they ask you to offer up a bit more of a fun fact about yourself. I roll, right? I wonder how many of you are sitting in a PD right now and have knowing smiles on your faces because you've just lived that scene. Funny, hey? We can all get up and perform in front of our students, but the second we have to do it in front of our fellow peers, our heart rate triples, butterflies appear in the pits of our stomachs, and we nervously cross and uncross our legs until our turn is over and we take a massive relieving sip of that hot beverage that's retained its scalding heat and regretfully gulp it down. We all know our names. We know we can't get the question wrong, but we all dread the spotlight on us. True to our very nature as teachers, it's not really about us, it's about everyone else. But let's touch back on that later. Well, just for laughs, let me include you and me in your PD. My name's Carly. I teach at Cardine College in South Australia. I've been teaching for 15 years, and a fun, completely irrelevant fact about me is that I secretly love filet-o-fish sandwiches from McDonald's. Yes, I'm a secret fish sandwich eater. Once per week I make the journey of shame to the drive-thru and treat myself to delicious disgustingness. I even get rid of all the evidence before my kids notice. Sad, right? I mean, no one really eats them, and you always have to wait. But it's my one vice that I allow for me once per week. What's hilarious is some of my students work at McDonald's and give me a knowing yet judgmental smile as they deliver it to waiting bay 1. They actually pay me out for it at school. Okay, back on track. All joking aside for a moment. In this context, in this moment, I'm going to ask you the question again, with no prescription. Stop and listen to my words. Who are you? Have you ever truly just paused and asked yourself that question? I have. I did. I still do. What I always conclude is not what you would expect. I conclude that what I think is irrelevant when it comes to teaching, because the title that we hold doesn't and cannot define us. The title is actually the least important part of the job. Why? Because it is just a name given to a role that is far greater than its appellation. Who we are and who we will be completely different to every beating heart that enters our classroom. What they will take away from you will also be different. Who we are is in the eyes and hearts of our students. I address this letter, Dear Teacher, a loaded statement that means so much more than the two words you can both see and hear. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, teachers are defined as being someone whose job is to teach in a school or a college. Okay, we can all agree with that statement. It's objective, a bit like it's raining or the sky is blue. It's factual. We can all agree with it. The American Dictionary circumscribes a similar message: a person who instructs or trains others, especially in a school. Again, it's another "the ice cream is cold" statement. What both definitions both fail to purvey is the subjective. Objective sticks to the facts. Subjective is loaded with feelings and emotion. And that's the heart of what I'm trying to reach today. Every day. What does it mean to be us? Who are we? Who are you? Throughout time, in its most clinical form, a school teacher has been viewed as a person who delivers knowledge and administers tests. Objective and true. A gatekeeper of knowledge, resources, and time. But still seems pretty cold-hearted, right? So let's dig deeper. To do so, let's first look at our students. Each student you teach is a representative of the future that is yet to be decided, that you get the privilege of shaping and forming. Each student is the future of humankind. When you next teach a class, stand silently and observe. Watch everyone walk in, take their seat, unpack their stationery, or not in the case of those that need gentle reminding. Just stand and watch. Maintain eye contact with the room. Say nothing. Your presence is powerful. The mental incubation period you give to the silence will mean that everyone will engage you. Just give it time. Whilst you give them the time, without them knowing, think about the weight of this thought. Look. You are looking directly at the future. There it is. Right there. The ones chatting away to the person sitting next to them. The persistent gum chewer who knows you're about to silently offer the waste paper bin for them to spit it out into. The class clown whose wisecracks make you cry with laughter on the inside but cannot show a glint of a smile on the outside. The kid that gives you the glassy look because they went to bed at 3 a.m. due to persistent gaming or Snapchatting. The one who's involved in every school activity, that just arrived from debate club and will leave your lesson in about 15 to 20 minutes time for their trombone lesson. The docile one, who would prefer you didn't notice their existence so they can fly under the radar and not have you call upon them to answer a question. The larger-than-life person that will ask you a million questions completely irrelevant to what they are about to learn. Then there's the phone addicts, the gamers, the Googlers. The ones that will angle their devices away from you as if you weren't born yesterday and know exactly what they're doing. The note passers, which have evolved into electronically passing notes via Teams now, rather than doing it the old-fashioned way on paper. The anxiety-riddled ones who tortured themselves the night before over every piece of homework. The persistent doodlers, who are often responsible for the floral adornments in the corner of the textbook. The easy A students who effortlessly can turn their hand to any field of study and make it look like a breeze. The secret studiers that have already downloaded the lesson content and have half finished the work that you've set for the day and will ask you for more. You know them all. Why? My students are your students. If you stand and wait for long enough, they will realise you are there. The wait is great. There's no shouting, rallying, or persuading. It will result in a higher engagement throughout your lesson too. Silence will eventually fall upon the classroom as each person is looking for what comes next. Now, don't get me wrong. It'll hold for about 5 seconds before the class clown makes a crack about you being frozen at the front. But as the laughter subsides, you will have their attention. They appreciated you not yelling. You can hide that tool away for when it really needs to be used. So, why did our deep dive involve us having to look at our students to understand more about who we are? Well, you already answered your own question by knowing your students. Who you are is the person they, for that moment, are looking to for direction. The smile, the acknowledgement, the hello, the waste paper bin. You have made yourself present for them. Who you are is their next step forward on their journey. You are in a position today, every day, to make a significant influence, to inspire. All teachers are different. We all have our own mixture of qualities, but it is our individuality that makes us special. Each teacher is different, but nearly every memorable teacher has a combination of essential qualities such as a devotion for their field of study, a passion that they simply cannot fake or hide, a sense of humour and a genuine pleasure when your students aim high and achieve, grace and kindness. Who you are is an improver of lives. You have the power to set an example and illuminate and inspire, light up the darkest of minds. So, before you take the role, get out the equipment and textbooks, iPads or whiteboard markers. Just say to yourself, I'm going to make a difference to the lives of these students today, no matter how small, insignificant, conscious or unconscious. I'm about to make a memory. I'm about to make an impact. Because not only are you going to be the someone whose job it is to teach in a school or a college, as defined by the dictionary, you are about to advance, guide, and shape humankind, the future. You are an asset to them becoming better human beings, be that academically, morally, ethically, spiritually, personally. You're about to unpack a toolbox that will bestow the power for them to become better people, better problem solvers, thinkers, and creators. A teacher's presence in a student's life adds value to theirs. You and they just don't realise it until much later on. So you may ask, why can I, a simple classroom teacher, be able to sit here and preach my impact on the lives of my students? Who am I to profess to you? It's definitely not to boost my ego or boast my talents. There's no self-serving purpose to this letter. It's designed to make me feel better about designed to make me feel better about what I do or affirm what I can do. It's plain and simple. I doubt, second guess, and overanalyze to death, and I'm sure you do too. We are all guilty of taking the monkey home at the end of the school day. Yes, I said monkey. We'll touch back on that in a moment. We all have our days where we feel like we don't quite measure up, question whether we handled something in the best possible way, doubt the delivery of something, or second guess why the structure of the lesson completely tanked. Was it something I did? Was my classroom management subpar? Did I not say enough, do enough? Could I have done something differently? Have I lost my touch? The truth is, we are all serial overthinkers, and I've wrapped my arm over many a shoulder of many a teacher over the years who I, in that moment, believe they've just delivered the worst lesson of their career. And in addition to that, they've hugged the hell out of me as I've bawled my eyes out like a baby because nothing I've done has gone to plan, and I feel like I have completely failed my students. After a particularly challenging teaching day in 2013, I made a mental note to remember a conversation between I and my deputy principal. I was about to go home for the weekend. Something had happened during one of my senior classes that had sent me into a spiral. It flung me into a self-destructive state, my mind going a million different directions, and about to jump in the car for the 70-minute trip home, I was glazed and tranced, trying to work out how to solve the issue. She saw me locking up the classroom and caught a glimpse of me zoned out. I was in my own world. She gently placed her hand on my shoulder and said, "Bad day?" I just looked, teary-eyed, directly at her calming facial expression. She said, "Do you need a chat?" I shook my head. She said, "Is it something urgent that needs handling tonight?" I thought about it and said no. She then smiled softly and said, "It's okay. Just don't take the monkey home over the weekend." I immediately, cluelessly grinned back, not understanding what on earth she was referring to. But she followed up with some of the best advice I've ever had. She said, "It's easy to dwell on the uncomfortable niggling monkey piggybacking its way on your journey home. It's got no place at home, or with your beautiful family. It'll wreak havoc and ruin your weekend. Some things are out of your control. We need to unpack the important stuff, learn to prioritise, and just let things go, just until we can objectively get clarity on the matter." She said, "Take the monkey off your back, put it somewhere safe, reassure the monkey you will be back, and that it and you need to rest." She then said, "We teach our students to maintain a healthy growth mindset, but rarely practice what we preach. The monkey will be fine. Go home. The monkey will be so much easier to handle when you've both settled, rested, and recharged, and are ready to handle it. It'll probably seem less chaotic on Monday when you unlock this door again." That was one of the best lessons I had ever learned from a seasoned teacher who's been in my spot a million times before. She schooled me at the age of 28. The dictionary needs to dedicate a page to the definition of a teacher, because teaching is so much more than a person who instructs or trains others. She was a true teacher. I went back on Monday. The weight of the problem was half, and I handled it with ease. So the first of many answers to the question asked at the beginning of this letter: who are you? You are a living, breathing human. Remember that. You can and will get things wrong, and that's okay. You will flounder and ruminate on how you did something and why it didn't work. For every 100 things you do right, you will nitpick at yourself and focus on the one thing you didn't. Just remember, the world needs humanity. There's no shame in sharing our humanity or acknowledging that we are capable of mistakes and have flaws. I think my students respect me more because of it. I remember being 6 and being amazed at seeing my teacher outside of school. I held my year 1 teacher in such high esteem. I viewed her as more than human. I saw her every day at school in her classroom, To me, bumping into her in the local town shopping on a Saturday morning was gobsmacking. I didn't see her as a living, breathing, food-eating mother and wife that she was. She was my teacher. I think there's a part of us all that sees teachers as non-humans. Sometimes the key to being the best and the most relatable teacher is to be human with them. The other reason that concept of this letter sparked to life was because I needed to credit those who taught me, those who gave me their patience and their kindness and the kick up the arse and the time and their love and their passion, calling me out on my mistakes and making me accountable. They need to know how grateful I am for all the things they did for me, the roles they played, and how I've held them in my heart for all these years, long after I left school myself and became a teacher. I need to let them know that all of the things they gave to me are still travelling into the lives of others. And it wasn't necessarily the content, it was their attitude. It was their behaviour, their approach to life and learning. I'm going to take you on a journey back in time. I graduated school in 2005 at nearly 19 years old. Now you might be thinking, 19, whew, that's a bit late. Truth is, on paper and to me, it seems late, but I wasn't held back. I was born on the borderline and I was the oldest member of my cohort. The cut-off birth date for enrolling in school in England was the 31st of August, and I happened to be born in the early hours of September 1st. So in a nutshell, I was held back because of regulation. Being older didn't advantage me in any way. It certainly placed unnecessary expectations on me and my abilities. Schooling didn't come easy to me. I had to work bloody hard to keep up and achieve. I was the student that threw their heart and soul into anything that interested me and was plain old average at everything else. Like me as an adult now, I followed my heart and my passions. I knew I didn't want to disappoint my family, being labelled the clever one for most of my childhood, when in reality my desire to achieve was fueled by not wanting to be a disappointment and having a secret envy to keep up with my much more academic friends. So I put the effort in. I put the effort in to pass what I needed to. But if I loved something, I gave it my all. Most of my teachers got me. They understood me, my work ethic, my abilities, my character and traits. They knew where I was lazy, why I neglected to sometimes not do their homework in exchange for putting more unnecessary hours into someone else's. It's funny. School for me seems like it happened just yesterday, but it's been 18 years since I graduated. I've lived another 18-year lifetime again, and so much has changed from then until today. Back then, education looked different. We had computer labs. Ours was under the library, hidden away in an old basement. It was really cool, and we loved going down the cold stone steps into the hidden room under the school, and it was almost like a hidden mission control bunker. Built in 1495, my school was over 500 years old, and when I began in 1998, the school had just celebrated its quincentenary. Every time I watch Harry Potter, I think back to the twisting staircases and the old damp smell of stone and beautiful ornate woodworking. The computer room, where I first learned how to set up a Hotmail account and exchange emails with a pen pal in Calais, trying my best to utilise the poorly strung together high school French I'd learned that week. 1 hour per week on technology. Everything else was in exercise books or on paper. It was a privilege to have. Now, education is more interactive. With the intrusion of digital technologies, the teacher has had to become so much more than the keeper of knowledge, because let's face it, one quick clinical click and you can discover how old the pyramids of Giza are, how Sirius clouds are formed, the difference between stalagmites and stalactites, how to make sourdough and what Krankenhaus means in German. Everything is available at the click of a button. Information can be gotten at an insanely fast way. So, where do we come in? Why have teachers become more, not less important? Well, teachers, you have the huge responsibility to chaperone and raise students to become creative and independent individuals who can be incisive problem solvers. Unlike AI, we can offer real life angles to our lessons and connect the dots in order to connect the world as human beings. One of my favourite pastimes of starting with a new class is to show them I'm human. I offer them a little anecdote or story relating to my life outside of school. Of course, always maintaining professional boundaries. I show them I'm just a human being with family and friendships, a person who makes mistakes and has experienced my own hardships and tribulations, and most importantly has learned from them. Lesson 1 is always about making a deep impact so that they come back and realise that they can relate to me and that I'm not a robot administering information there to give them a hard time. I always aim to leave a positive vibe that will carry them through to the next lesson, to make them want to come back, and that they belong in my classroom, even if they don't really want to be there. I make sure they know they have a place there, no matter what. Where did this methodology come from? My own teachers. The ones that shared a little bit about their own children or their own past growing up. Those that visited a concert that you may have gone to or wanted to go to, or a funny story from their weekend supermarket visit, or something hilarious about their drive to school. They showed me a human side. They used their humanity to soften us hardwired hormonal adolescents, showing compassion, acknowledging our existence, connecting with us, and recognising we are just social beings that sometimes just appreciate a smile, a hello, a how are you, and some warmth. One of my past teachers did something I do now with my younger students. She had the amazing ability to remember everyone's name after one double lesson. She understood that nothing affirms a relationship more than being personally greeted by your name. She made a conscious decision to acknowledge us multiple times in our first lesson by our names. By doing so, she offered a strong sense of belonging. She made an effort to get to know us, and it was appreciated. I do it now. At the beginning of a new semester, I say to my students, I will know all of you by name by the end of the lesson. They all look at me as if I'm a crazy person, saying it's impossible to know them all. I actually spend a bit of time getting to know them rather than jumping headfirst into learning. That spicy question that we all got asked at our PD session is the only question that shows your humanity without giving anything too deep away. It's relatable. I do this knowing if I make the effort, it will pay back in dividends as we head towards the end of a unit of work. The lesson I learned from that teacher is that a combination of her kind heart, amazing memory, and her time given made her so much more than just a dispenser of knowledge. She got to know me, which made me more, not less accountable for my learning. My homeroom teachers took me in like a stray cat. My mum always dropped us at school early because she had to head off to work, and we lived in a small village outside of a big town. My sister and I would sit outside my homeroom on the floor eating our foil-wrapped breakfast, usually toast or crumpets. Finishing our homework, we broke 2 school rules every day. The first was no eating indoors, and the second was no loitering in the corridors. We went to school in England. It was freezing and often raining, so we took shelter, pushing against the school rules for our own comfort. Our homeroom teachers knew this. They'd arrived to unlock the classroom door and set up for the day and ushered us in so that we wouldn't get into trouble from other teachers who were sticklers for following the boundaries. We were good kids, and our teachers saw that and refused for us to wind up on the bad kid radar. Of course, we were grateful, and we did odd jobs around the room as a gesture of gratitude for not winding up like a frozen drowned rat outside. I did this for 7 years that I was in high school, and in that time I grew to know, appreciate and understand my teachers. I got to know and learn about Judaism from my first homeroom teacher, who shared insights into her family gatherings and celebrations. I was the first student she told she was expecting a daughter, and I even received a card in the mail from her with a photo of her newborn Yael, who would now be 24 years old. She never returned after going on maternity leave to our school, but she never left my heart and mind. She was a gentle soul who made time for me and my younger, much taller sister. By year 8, my friends Nicola and Steph also turned up at school early and rocked up at the classroom door requesting shelter. Our next homeroom teacher, a male, we had for the following 4 years. His name was Mr. Garner. We called him Richard. Sometimes. Disrespectful? Maybe. He reminded us not to call him that in front of others. We did it only in the morning and never in front of others. It was a little joke we carried on into year 11 and became an affectionate address every morning. He was a Bristolian with a very distinctive farmer-style English accent. I'm not sure why I remember this, but he loved U2 and talked endlessly about Achtung Baby, his favourite album. He wore the same football, soccer as it's called in Australia, scarf and matching hat. He let us use the one and only computer at the back of the room to find keystrokes for making polyphonic ringtones for the Nokia 3210 mobile phones we had. You know, the kind that you could throw directly at a brick wall and it wouldn't dent. Held its charge for about 7 days, and you'd play Snake and brag to your friends about how long yours was. Mr. Garner always had an interesting banter and weird and wonderful things to share about his holiday plans and who he was catching up with over the weekend and what his day had in store. He communicated with us and treated us with respect. By the end of the 4 years, we had our own little breakfast club consisting of about 7 other members, all because he didn't want us sitting outside in the cold because of a school rule technicality. Sounds stupid, right? And you might be wondering, where am I heading with this? I'm absolutely not saying it's okay to break school rules. Never. They are there for a reason. The fact is, we didn't abuse the rule. We appreciated that the rule had been bended for good reason and made ourselves useful because we know he was doing us a favour. He and Miss Sacker, my first homeroom teacher, saw a little something of themselves in us and made school so much more digestible because we got to our day off to a great start with a positive mindset and a strong sense of belonging. I do it now, not all the time, but I head down to my homeroom to let my kids in early and we have conversations about anything and everything. We share recess and they do odd jobs and I send them on their way to their lessons and hopefully make them feel better about their day. I hope I'm paying it forward. A bit like how mums pass on baby clothes down the line to their friends that are expecting. For as long as I can remember, I wanted to become a teacher. I remember my school experience to be a roller coaster of emotions and waves, of feelings where friendship groups shifted and changed and teachers were my anchor. Teachers kept me going. I'm not sure what day I decided to become a teacher. I just knew from the first year of high school that that's what I wanted to be. From then until now, being an educator has changed drastically. Since I was a student, it's evolved somewhat dramatically. In 14 years since I started my first teaching job, people say to me all the time, I don't know how you do it. Why do you do it? I think the answer lies with not why I or you choose to be a teacher. The answer is why I or we continue to choose to be, because the job changes all the time. I choose to ride the ever-changing teaching wave because I get to be in a place where I can make the biggest difference to the future. My students bring brightness to my soul. They bring me joy, not because they're all well behaved or they are all academic. They bring fuel to the spark, the flame of wanting to inspire. I watch kids fail, and then I get to see them succeed and see them grow and learn from the challenges I set for them. I make a point of trying to connect with my students and reach them on multiple levels, because the best way to teach them is to first get to know them, how they work, how they interact with my teaching style, and then when I have enough information, I can commit to them and their individual learning capabilities, their personalities, their character. I can adapt and help them achieve. My vision and mission as a teacher from the very start is to create an educational environment which is inclusive, supportive and accessible, so that all learners are able to embrace their education, beliefs and interests, which will allow them to enjoy their school life and take with them the key skills that will later support them in their adulthood. In getting to know my students and their families, I highly appreciate the benefits in providing an education that is individualised and personal to all, because I believe children are capable of anything if given the right tools. Those tools aren't necessarily resource-based, but pillars of support, care, and a strong sense of belonging. To be able to get and understand my students is key to the way I practice teaching. There was one teacher in particular that got me better than anyone else. She stood out from the rest. She still does to this day. She was a remarkable woman. She got me better than anyone else in my life. She saw potential in me that she wanted to extract. She's the reason I am who I am today. I remember my first interaction with her. It was year 9. She was my design and technology teacher, and I was rotating from woodworking to textiles. I'd just made a wooden candle holder with Mr. Pitt. He was a great teacher too, always called me by my surname and elongated it by adding an ER into the middle. My name was Bartnicki or Bartnicki, a Polish surname that literally no one could pronounce properly. He used to yell, "Miss Bartnicki," across the classroom, paid me out every time he saw me for various little things I'd done. He always made me smile. I remember the candle holder, total fire hazard. I remember painting it grey and sanding a moon-shaped piece that took me the whole week to get right. In hindsight, wood and candle and lacquer, we never lit it. It was highly combustible. Thinking the house would go up in flames, we just left it in the kitchen. Maybe for about a week before putting it in the attic. Well, the rest of time, I think. Don't even know what happened to that. I must ask Mum about that one. I was super excited about going into her class. I was an obsessive creator. I loved drawing, designing. So moving to textiles was just absolutely my element. That heart and soul pouring I talked about earlier, this was it. Mrs. Linda Eccles, she was my inspiration. I remember going into her classroom for the first time. I can close my eyes and see it now. The awful grey light of an English February sky. It was freezing. My rouge red ice block hands frozen in a claw-like position, barely being able to bend my fingers or hold a pen for that matter. I sat and I soon warmed up in the Hawaiian tropic heat setting that she'd put on in the classroom and thawed us out pretty sharpish to get us working. She stood at the front of the classroom and paused. She didn't say a word until a stony silence fell upon the room. We realised she was waiting. She started by giving us all the stock standard health and safety lesson. I remember she handed me 20 pins and 1 needle in a little piece of felt. It was burgundy. I had to keep this safe for the whole 6-week block, and I would be charged 5 pence for every pin and 30p for every needle lost. I lost heaps, mainly because I was lending them to friends and failed to ask for them back. She introduced herself to the class and announced that we would be making cushions, and we would be designing the front of it with a plique and making roulet loops and toggles for the back. I knew straight away what I wanted mine to look like. I had generated the design in my head, but she wanted us to do 4. So even though I had to pretend to consider the other 3, number 1 was my choice. That day, it still holds tight in my memory. I can go as far to say that she is responsible for where I am today. She was a mum. She brought that motherly instinct into her teaching. That was her strategy. She was a second parent. She got me ready for the outside world. She saw her students as a continuum of herself. She treated her students like her own children and watched out for us always, making sure we aimed high and achieved. She was demanding, ruthless with her expectations, challenged me beyond my capabilities. She pushed me hard, but she was also soft and understanding and very giving with her time. She gave up her after school so I could catch up, not because she had to, but because she saw how painstaking it was for me to cover every last detail on my cushion. There was sequins and tassels and embroidery and buttons and ribbon and multi-layered applique. 6 weeks was never going to be enough for me, and I think she realised that after the first week. But she gifted me her time. She didn't have to. She could have told me to calm down and go back to the basics, but she humoured me. I was so grateful for that time. I remember even turning up one morning before school to sit and hand stitch lettering. She was at her desk, glanced up, realised it was me, and just let me carry on. I was never a bother, or if it was, she never once made me feel that way. That time, that extra mile meant the world to me. A person can always make more money, but time, it's limited. When she gave me her time, she gave me a small portion of her life that she would never get back. I took that time and cherished it and enjoyed every second of it. That time meant that I decided I wanted to be just like her, a giver of my time. She didn't realise it, but her investment in me is still paying forward today. I think of her often when I teach a class or talk with a student. I try to model myself in her image. I'm a mum to my own children and to everyone else's. I look around at my children, bound for high school in the next few years, and I stop and think, I would hope that my children's teachers will adopt them, see them, know them, their talents, individual quirks, flaws, strengths and weaknesses. I hope they accept them for who they are and help them on their own journey of discovery of who they are and what they will become. I hope they help them to carve out pathways for what they want to do with their life. I want them to all feel that they can go to their teachers and look at them as an extension of their own mum and dad. Responsible grown-ups to trust, talk to, learn with, be inspired by. I hope they find that person that gets them. I suppose teachers are like second parents. For 14 years in the UK, 13 here in Australia, they shape us. They shape our minds. They help us to recognise and realise who we are, what we want from life, and encourage us to make choices, decisions, and choose directions about how to realise ourselves, our goals, and our future. My parents divorced just a few months before starting high school. It was a hard time for me, as it would be for any kid, but it was my teachers that made everything better. The squabbles and drama my parents' separation caused within the family melted away as I entered my world. School. My teachers, Mrs. Eccles, in particular, talked with me and lended an ear, provided me with somewhere to vent my frustrations and feel heard and noticed. My teachers provided a safe space where I didn't have to choose a side or be reminded that my family was no longer the unit it used to be. They helped me to grieve the life I thought I would have at home and helped me to accept my new reality and my new family dynamic. How? By giving me a constant and consistent place at school, my second home. As I travelled through school, it became apparent that I was only ever going to be one thing, a teacher. I remember telling Mrs. Eccles that it was my plan to graduate and go to university to study design and then do a postgrad in teaching. I had a plan. From year 10, my plan was set in concrete. I was going to go off and study after leaving school. off to university, something no one from my family had ever done before. It was a scary concept. I told her what I needed, and she said, okay, let's make it happen. Year 10 and 11, I specialised in textiles and art. She was my teacher in both years. Then it got to years 12 and 13. No one took the specialist subject, and I got the terrible news the class wouldn't run. I was devastated. I felt my dreams crushed, my heart sank, and in that moment in time, I was out of hope. I couldn't do the course I'd selected. I needed the points to get on the course, and without it, I couldn't follow the concrete dream I'd set for myself. I was crushed for about 48 hours. Then Mrs. Eccles came to see me. She said, I've got a plan, leave it with me. As there were 10 boys taking woodwork, 2 taking graphics, and another handful taking metalwork, she came up with an idea to make a hybrid class, the first of its kind at our school. And it was renamed Material Products. Why? So she could chuck me in that class under the design and technology umbrella and allow me to do the course. She tag teamed with another teacher, Mr. Rogers. She took a double and he took the other 2, and they shared us. Mr. Rogers hadn't taught textiles or fashion design, but he knew product design, and he supported me in my theory. He actually reminds me of my current line manager today, Rob. He was a blast, trusted that I knew exactly what I was doing, and threw his whole support into any idea, thought, theory, and helped me to implement it. Mr. Rogers made it work, collaborated with Mrs. Eccles, and between the 2 of them, they gave me time outside of class in addition to make it come together for me. What an act. Such generosity. Mrs. Eccles didn't have to go that extra mile, but yet again, she didn't give up on me. She made it work. When I said earlier, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be where I am today, I literally would have had a different outcome to my story. Maybe I would have done it. Maybe I would have just given up on my dreams and settled to do something else entirely. She didn't give up on me. At the beginning of this letter, I asked you, who are you? Have I now got you thinking about your students and who you are to them? I wonder what he or she would say if someone asked him or her the question. I'd hope they'd reply with something more than the detached linear facts. I hope that Linda Eccles wouldn't just say, I teach design and technology at King Edward School in Lichfield, because she wasn't just a lady who was a teacher at King Edward School who drove a saloon and had 2 sons. The end. She was so much more. She was hope. In my eyes, she was an amazing human who invested wholeheartedly in me. She gifted me her care, support, and time. Her love for her subject inspired me to know more, do more, be more. The beautiful words of St. Mary of the Cross MacKillop that I resonate with so much after working at the very school she resided in the 1800s in South Australia. I wanted to do more, be more. I wanted to be hope. My journey to university was amazing. I hated the train ride and the 2 bus journeys there every day. I'm still paying for the neck and back pains and strains from lugging folios and bags and dragging suitcases, always over-prepared, plus the kitchen sink, just in case. My 4th year landed me back in the hands of Linda Eccles, my 3rd and final teaching placement. She was my supervising teacher. She signed the official transcript that qualified me to become a teacher. Full circle, she was there for me. She was my hope. If I asked her, who are you? I know she would say, a teacher. She wouldn't be boastful or exaggerate her abilities. She didn't have an ego. She possessed the magic of being hope for her students. And I'm sure that I wasn't the only one. So I ask you again, who are you? Let's revisit the word teacher. It doesn't cut it. You are magic. Imagine you have a container full of glitter and you've lost the lid. We all know it literally goes everywhere when we're crafting, and you find yourself vacuuming it up for weeks after the event. Like confetti, it literally gets into every nook and cranny. Imagine every time you go into your classroom, your glitter gets knocked over, and the air conditioner, coupled with a couple of full speed ceiling fans, forces the millions of tiny metallic pieces up and around the room. You have a classroom full of students, and the glitter travels over their heads. Some may only get a little speck of glitter landing on their head. Some may be washing it out of their hair for weeks. Now, that glitter represents your magic. You will reach everyone, minorly for some. For others, it's like Peter Pan's fairy dust. They will take it and fly. Your speckle of glitter will touch everyone's heart, everyone's mind. They'll never forget you, ever. That glitter shines, even just one speck. It's a reflection of your light, your influence, your ability to reach students, far and wide. Remember, who you are will be completely different to every beating heart that enters your classroom. What they will take away from you will also be different. That glittery light will reflect and refract in a million different directions. Who we are is in the minds and hearts of our students. We will mean something different to everyone, and that's okay. As I draw this letter to its natural close, I'm going to leave you with a story from my own teaching. It's about a girl. Her name I'm going to change for duty of care reasons. Let's call her Hope. Seems fitting as I've used that word so many times in this letter already. Hope had special needs, but it was put into a mainstream classroom. She was in year 10. She had no ESO. It was just me and 18 other girls. I knew she had needs. I knew that she had limitations. I already had a plan for her. We were making pyjamas, a full set of button-down pyjamas. After going through the design brief and introducing the task, I got all my students to start designing and researching. The optimism and excitement filled the room. So many artistic bugs and busy bees that were just loving life in my class. Ready to do the circular check on everyone, I saw Hope take out some colouring in sheets. As she started colouring in, I went over to her and said, "Hey, Hope." She replied, "Yes, honey." She wasn't afraid with social constructs of how to address teachers, and I believe she used terminology her own parents used to address her. I said, "How are you?" She replied, "I'm just fine, honey, thanks." I knelt beside her and asked, "What are you doing?" She said, "Colouring in." I said, "Why?" She said, "I don't do sewing. I just like to watch everyone else and help the teacher." I said, "Have you ever taken textiles before?" She said, "Yes, 2 years." I said, "Did you make anything in those 2 years?" And she said, "No." She said, "I'm too frightened of the machines. They're really scary." I must add, for a little bit of context, Hope had the educational capability of a 5-year-old and socially was about 6 to 7 years old. A fully grown 15-year-old girl who was as sweet and innocent as a year 1 student. I knelt down and I said, "Would you like to have a go this year?" She looked confounded, confused, her bamboozled facial expression touching. Doe-eyed, she replied, "Me? Use the machines? Don't be so silly, sweetie." I smiled as she again gave me an affectionate name. She carried on with her colouring, dismissing the very notion that I'd just presented to her. I said, "Hope, look at me. I'm serious. You can do this. I believe in you." She began to cry. She said, "I can't. It's too hard and too scary." I replied with, Who said that you can't do this?" She paused. She didn't have an answer. Drying her tears on a blazer's sleeve, she looked at me again. I said, "I say you can. Watch." I slid her work from underneath her and over to me across the table. I turned over the A4 printout of colouring in onto the blank space on the back, the red ink from the textures she'd been using bleeding through. I leaned over into her pencil case and I took out a blue biro. I drew a quick, simple pair of trousers on the back. I said, "Hope, where do a person's legs go in these?" I handed her the pen. She thought for a moment and then sketched some feet at the end of the trousers. She said, inside the pants, silly. I said, how do we stop our legs from falling out? She said, we join the sides together. And I said, okay. I said, draw a line where they need to join. She drew 2 straight lines on the outside of the pants. I said, very good. Do you think you could do that for me on the sewing machine? Let's draw them out bigger and have a go, and you can show me. It was then at that moment Hope sat for the very first time at a machine. It wasn't threaded up, it was completely uncomplicated. I didn't want to overwhelm her. All she had to do is learn how to push down the presser foot, know how to turn the balance wheel and test out the speed of the pedal. It actually seems quite complicated as I try and describe it into words, but without the threads and the bobbins to worry about, it was simple. I said, a teacher, another amazing mentor and friend of mine, Kim, once told me how to teach students to use the pedal. She said, imagine the pedal is a puppy and it's just snuck under the dinner table and it's gently rubbing its head against your foot. It wants to be fussed. Now, you can't go under the table and stroke it with your hand. Your hands are busy eating dinner. But you can fuss it with your foot. So you lift your foot gently and stroke its head with your toes, lightly. You don't push down too hard. You'd crush the puppy. It was at this point she began to chuckle. She giggled through, saying, no one wants to crush a puppy. Oh, miss, you're so silly. I said, I know, but you know what's sillier? Driving a car really fast. She said, yeah, you'd be pretty stupid to drive a car fast. You can have an accident. I said, right. Okay, so when you touch the sewing machine pedal with your foot, imagine you're driving a car down a straight road. If you go too fast, you could end up veering off to the side. But if you go at a comfortable speed, you'll keep going straight. Nodding at me, she squeezed the pedal and the needle moved. She jumped off her seat. She was so startled. She settled back into a seated position and immediately the adrenaline subsided. I said, hang on a minute. You can't drive a car without opening the garage door. We need to make sure everything's safe around the car. Sewing machine. She chuckled again. She liked the little dad jokes. I rolled myself for effect. I gave her the paper pants I'd just cut out for her. I said, sew the sides you told me need to be joined. I popped the paper under the machine for her, dropped down the presser foot at the back, looked under the table to see if her foot was touching the pedal. I looked at her and said, all safety checks are done. You are free to go. True to her nature, she had to do a double check. She arched her neck over her shoulder, turned her body towards me and looked at me, and paused. She was thinking. She then offered her own pearl of wisdom. It wouldn't be very nice to pat a puppy's head with your shoes on. Then I giggled. I said, okay, do you want to take your shoes off? She said, great idea. Now she was ready. She looked at me again, bewildered. I said, what happens next? I'd already showed her the basics of how the needle moves up and down. I got her to test the pedal. I said, shall we run through our safety checks again? To reassure her. She said, put this lever down to lock the paper underneath. I went, good, now what? She said, move this wheelie thing towards me and put the needle in the pants. I said, good, now what? Hold the paper in 2 spots, keeping my hands away from the needle. I said, great, you've done all your safety checks, now off you go. She hesitantly squeezed the pedal, and the slow whirling sound of the startup of the machine kicked into action. Much to her amazement, the machine started to move. The paper too, slowly inching forward down the paper pants. From that moment on, Hope never looked back. Weeks went by. I gave her lines. Taylor's chalked everything. She followed them. She sewed them. She even plucked up the courage to learn the overlocker. After 8 weeks, I'd showed her how to set up a machine. I showed her how to sew in a straight line. I helped her Google her fabric and went and bought it for her. Was she slower than everyone else? Yes. Did it matter? Absolutely not. She brought her sandwiches in at lunch and we carried on. Hope was an amazing student, an incredible listener, and really good at tracing lines and drawing. I saw that from day dot. I said to her, imagine the needle is your pencil and you are drawing a line of stitching. I created a differentiated method for her achieving the same result as everyone else in the classroom. She was heading for the same destination. She just took a different route to the others. Sometimes some kids just need a different map. On week 10, Hope had made a full set of pyjamas. I've never seen pride like it. She was grinning from ear to ear. She raced to the toilets, changed into them, and came back to the classroom, proud as punch, modelling them in the mirror. All the others complimented her, high-fived her achievement, and gushed about how good they were. Weeks before, I said to Hope, let's surprise Mum. Let's not tell her you were doing these and surprise her at home when you finish them. We folded them and placed them into a spotlight bag, and off Hope went home. 5 minutes later, after leaving my classroom, a teary-eyed Mum walked in. She said how, when, riddled with disbelief. She couldn't have. I explained short of drawing the lines on the fabric, Hope did everything. Pinned, cut, tacked, sewed, overlocked, ironed. She even managed to do the buttonholes. Were they a little wonky? Yes. Did she care? Did I care? No. She did it, and we said it was made it more unique. Why is this story so important to me? To Hope, to her mum. She was me, the girl taking her wooden candle holder home, and the crazy over-embellished and adorned cushion. She achieved something that she'll remember for the rest of her life. All children are capable. Hope was capable. Given the right tools, time, and energy, with the right roadmap, right approach, she hadn't been afforded the opportunity before. She could have slipped under the radar, but she was noticed. I saw that she was good at drawing and colouring, and I used that to her advantage and programmed it into her sat-nav, taking a completely different route to the rest of the wonderful students in the class. So, what's the moral of this story? Hope's story. The moral is, who you are is the wind behind your students, the wind offering loft to their flight. Who said you have to take the road? Why not the train, the aeroplane, a bicycle or a boat? In the air you can go any direction. You don't have to fix yourself to one thing. Find the right pathway for your students and you will reach gold. The wind can change direction to push you to the right place, so adjust their wings to allow them to keep flying. Who I was to Hope was the force she needed to believe she could fly. So, teachers, you amazing people, teach. Teach your heart out. The love you pour in will evolve in the hearts and minds of your students. Don't hold students to a strict doctrine. One size doesn't fit all. Let your students find their own unique, sometimes unconventional way. Why? That's how we change lives. That's how we truly teach. Let me ask you once more, who are you? Dear teacher, you are the driving force behind your students. You are the giver of whatever your students need you to be, who they will be, whether you touch the minds of your students gently or get locked into their hearts for the rest of their lives. They will remember you. Who you are is a memory in the making. You are the person that will help them change the world. What a privilege and an honour and a purpose. A dear teacher you are and always will be. Thank you for listening.